Okay, that was a bit last minute, and I just realised that the message only just went out, and I don't see any comments yet, and I'm feeling a little bit lonely, so I'm going to play some music while I let the people roll in. Let's turn on the chat, say hello if you're in, hope you got the message for this, and let's have some fun with some music. I'm in the mood for some 128 BPM. Can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me. Okay, boom, let's do this. Okay, also later, new track. Hey, there's Quint, there's Mr. Cordy Chip. Oh, Sergeant Buko's here, that's good to hear. Well, okay, I'm going to give it like 2 minutes and play a track in the meantime. Let's save this from last time. Let's do a new track. Ooh. Save. New. Yep. Boom. 128. You can't see me yet, no. Hope you can all hear me okay. I'm sorry, I can't really do much more about the sound. I just tried seeing if I could pump it up, but this is sort of it. I am trying one new thing tonight. Boom. Ooh. That's this one. There we go. All right. Hey, Laura. was a bit of a mess. But I think it's time to start the show, so let's do that. Boom! Welcome to Tokyo Tonight 2. That is the new wireless connection that I'm using for the show, so I can like do this and show that at the same time and not always get tripped up with the HDMI wire, so that should make that work well. Good to see you all. And there are the comments. There we go. Boom! Mr. Sergeant Book, I caught you first there in the live comments there. Actually, the computer and the house music has heated up the room somewhat, so I am going to turn off the audio input capture. Hope you can see me okay, and hope that you've had a good week. Good to see. Wow, who have we got in here? We've got Mr. Cordy Chep, we've got Quint Rackard, we've got Sergeant Bilko, we've got the Soft Distortion. Good to see you, and indeed, I've been waiting for you to come. I'm glad you finally made it. It's nice to see a new username, so welcome. Lauren Sakai, awesome to see you, and hope you're enjoying your travels around Japan. The JVlog07, good to see you. Boom, James Kelly. Lara, good to see you. We've got, who else we got in here? We've got James Kelly, King and Kodos, Tai Nakamura, awesome. Bald Burlit's Boy, boom, boom. Fox Morris, boom. Awesome, great to see everybody here. Don't have so many topics as last week, but I've got some good topics to talk about. Maybe the first thing that I will talk about is, so with MyChan TV, I've kind of just had the site running. It's fairly solid and stable, and it's been good for that. And I like using it myself to watch and catch up with content. And I've been thinking about the next step, and because a lot of people said that they really like an iOS app, I actually looked at how much it would cost to get one developed, with the idea of doing like a Kickstarter or something for it. It turns out it's going to cost quite a lot more than I hoped it would, and I've already sunk a lot into the app, and it's already working quite well on the web. So I've gone back to, I was thinking of going in the direction of doing a mobile app, and now I'm coming back where I really want to get it onto something soon, because I am paying for all the overheads at the moment. I want to keep the site going. I'm moving back towards doing something more along the lines of a free tier, pro tier, like basically adding a few extra options. The main one I'm thinking of is when I'm catching up on lots of videos. It's really cool when you're catching up on lots of short videos, but sometimes, you know, you get like a 1 hour video comes in the middle of it and it stops you catching up. And you know, sometimes you want to watch long videos, sometimes you don't. So I'm thinking about doing like a length of video filter or something like that, and making it like a feature that you get, like it's an extra feature if you want to support the site. So I'm taking another tack right now. I've looked into the mobile app thing, and unless I can start earning some money back off the site, I can't afford to develop it as extra, at least not for now. But instead I do want to go the subscription route, I'm thinking right now, so I'm scoping that one out. But that's it. Please keep using the site. It is awesome. It's working really, really well. I'm getting in the habit now of using it when I just want to catch up like one channel. So I do quite a lot of bundles like that. I really appreciate, again, all the people who test it, and there's a number of testers there in the comments, so great to see all of you guys. Consider using a framework that can do iOS and Android from the same code base. Yeah, there is that. So the problem is that with iOS you can't make it a straight conversion of the website, so you do have to innovate a little bit, and I've got some ideas for that, but even just to do one, and I agree, save the cost by doing it the same for Android and for iOS, but you've still got to make it something original, and I've got some ideas for that. But yeah, you know, there's a lot going on with it, so I've got to do that. Mr. Cordy Chip, I don't understand the comments. Keep your politics somewhere else. I mean, we talk about politics here. I think that's all good, but yeah, anyway, that's going really well, and again, thanks everyone for supporting it. Remember to go check it out. Yeah, I'm just trying to think. My son, we're talking about where to go. There's possibly going to be, and I don't have a news story about this, but I think I mentioned this last week. Abe mentioned the idea of getting an extra vacation next year for May 1. And yeah, it's not confirmed yet, but if it happens, there could be 10 days off in May next year. So I asked the lad, I asked my son, who turns 9 tomorrow, by the way, so he's, yes, he's gotten huge. And I asked him where he wants to go, and he said Vancouver. Now, I've been to Seattle. I'm like, dude, let's go to Seattle. I know Seattle. He said, no, I want to go to Vancouver. I don't know why he's got this Vancouver thing, but if there's anyone here from Vancouver, oh, that's the wrong device. I want to keep that one turned on. If there's anyone here from Vancouver, I'd appreciate getting some tips, actually, because I'm trying. The last day or so, I've been looking for Vancouver tips. So that was kind of cool. But yes, more for you from the Japan dude. Good to see you in here. We've got Arubaito, we've got all that sort of stuff. I know, Tai Nakamura, I want to go to Michigan. Seriously, I do want to go to Michigan, actually. So watch this space. We'll see what happens with that. I'm also probably going to be going to Singapore in the next wee while, if there's anyone down there. So yes, Bald Billet's boy. Oh, it's from Toronto. Okay, yeah, I know a couple of Toronto people. I got some Vancouver tips as well, but all good there. But other than that, let's get into the topics, because there are some good ones to talk about. And boom, let's do it. So tonight, I was actually just like there looking out the window, and I saw that. Pretty awesome, right? Like Mount Fuji, particularly spectacular. The air was super clear. So you know, on a kind of hazy day, you can't really see Mount Fuji from Tokyo, but with the sunset and the boom, and it was kind of cool. So I had to Instagram that. I had to do it, and came out pretty well. So that is Mount Fuji from right where you are watching. This was on NHK News last night. I had never actually heard of this. I mean, I'm kind of embarrassed. In New Zealand, where I'm from, I think it's the same in America. In New Zealand, there's an emergency number 111. In America, it's the same as 911, where you call up and you say what emergency service you need, like fire, police, ambulance, whatever. In Japan, they have separate emergency numbers for like ambulance, and for police, it's 110. But to tell you the truth, I think for ambulance it's like 117. I've been here all this time and I still actually don't remember the right ones for fire and police. And I've only ever in 20 years had to call it up once where I needed to call an ambulance, and I didn't know the one for ambulance, so I called up 110. 117 is directory, I think, and they'll tell you, they'll connect you up. But there is this number which isn't in every prefecture, but in a lot of prefectures there's this number which you dial hash 7119, like that. And what that does is, it's when you are not sure if you need to call an ambulance and you want to get advice on, you know, either calling an ambulance, or if you don't quite need an ambulance but you do need to maybe get some advice on whether you should go to a hospital, and how to get to the hospital and where the nearest open hospital is, especially like in the middle of the night or on a Sunday or something like that. You can call this hash 7119. There are doctors on the line, and there's basically operators which have so it's sort of like a halfway house to like a 911 call, where apparently it's been kind of really big on Twitter lately, because a lot of there's been this cold which everyone gets this time of year. It's like a cough that just doesn't go away for like a month. Everybody seems to have it. I've been lucky so far, but when you get it, you are screwed for a long time. And for the people who get it, it's been really nasty this year, where people will like really suffer during night. Like they'll find it hard to breathe, and they'll wake up and they'll think they don't know if they should go to hospital or not. And the Twitter hashtag people are sharing around is this hash 7119. So it's a good number to know if you are in Japan and you are sick and you think it's serious. So yeah. So by the way, I'm trying to follow here. That's right, 110 is police. So what is it exactly? Maybe someone can Google it and put it in the comments right now. What is it for fire and what is it for ambulance? Because I still get it mixed up. So yeah. And I think James O'Hara, they do that as well. Well, they're reconnected, but they don't have a unified number in Japan, which is a slight pain. So anyway, this is really good if you're feeling sick and you're not quite sure if you should go to a doctor or not. Hash 7119. This next one, this is kind of cool. I'm like here and I'm tethered to the table because like I don't want to like disrupt the HDMI cord. That's really frustrating. I'm using AirDrop at the moment. This is called actually, what is it called? It's called Air Server. And actually, someone recommended this to me when I was doing this for like Twitch gaming. And yeah, the only thing that annoys me that I was just experimenting with before the show, I was going to do more of the musical lead-in for the show and so on, but I thought it'd be cool if I could just put the visuals up there and do the sound on here, so I can avoid the latency and I can actually like mix tracks live and share the graphics without having the cable. Problem is, when you are iOS will not let you separate the sound. You have to send the sound and the images together, which makes sense because otherwise they'll be out of sync. But it's frustrating because it means I can't play K-Oscillator on this and have it on. I can have it with the sound, but there'll be this huge lag and it'll be impossible to play. That's what I was trying to do. But for something like this with no sound, it's super, super cool. So yeah, this next story is talking about the government's been looking at, it's kind of the part of this global trend of making people pay for their plastic bags and straws, and banning plastic straws and stuff like that. The government's apparently now seriously considering making it mandatory to make people pay for plastic bags, which is a good thing. Mr. Cordy Chap, I've played around with it, I've experimented with it, only for just games off my iPhone, and yeah, I mean, you know, Who hasn't, right? I mean, I've got this whole setup. It's very simple. It's very simple to switch over. So yes, plastic bags. And truth is, I do make a point of not taking a plastic bag if I don't need one. There again, they can be kind of handy, like at work. They don't have like rubbish bins around my desk. You have to sort of gather it all up and carry it to the rubbish bins in the pantry at the end of the day. So from that perspective, I do collect a plastic bag every morning, but I suppose making you pay 5 yen for it is, yeah. Bald Berlitz boy has the numbers there. There we go. 110 for police, 118 for Japan Coast Guard if you ever need that. 118 is Japan Coast Guard Fire. Fire and ambulance is 119. Okay, that's kind of confusing that they have those together, but there we go. Wei Gaijin, good to see you. Welcome. And indeed, I mean, so what do we think about this? I know it was a huge mess in Australia when they tried having paid plastic bags at supermarkets there. Some people freaked out, and some supermarket basically started attacking people, like supermarket clerks. But how stupid is that? They're getting $5 an hour. The supermarket decided on the checkout bags, and people were attacking them. I don't think that'll happen in Japan, but it is a pain. But probably you'll see it'll be a bit like the smoking thing with soft disincentives. People will go along with it and not use them. So we'll see what happens there. This is kind of cool with embedded videos on the standard web YouTube player. It's going to start showing. Apparently you're going to get the mini player now, so you can browse around the site and not lose the video like you do on mobile. Plus, you can also, there's also going to be able to show a subscribe button. So I thought that was kind of cool. Blame Plastic Bertrand. Ça plane pour moi. That's like the only song he had that was. I'm sure he has like 100 hits that are famous in Belgium, but I think that's like the only track he made. National Lampoon's European Vacation. I like that song. I actually made a rugby music video out of that song once. So James O'Hara, you have excellent taste, and well, no, you don't, because you're saying ban him. So no, not allowed to do that. This next story is not. I typically don't talk about non-Japan stories, although this one's gotten a lot of coverage, and frankly it's disturbing, and so I'm just going to share it for that sense. Everyone's heard about what's going on in China right now. Like they've basically they've had trouble for a long time with Islamic terrorist groups. Geographically they're very close to Afghanistan, Central Asia, the Central Asian Russian republics, where there has been a big extended problem of radical militancy and so on, and there have indeed been terror attacks in China from Islamic militants. But at the same time, there's also been a general civil rights kind of issue with Uyghurs, basically from the Uyghur part of China, basically in the far west, right smack in the middle of Asia. China's basically used the terrorism that to whatever extent exists there as an excuse to kind of do what Denzel Washington had to deal with in the movie Martial Law. They've basically gone like fully on basically outlawing, well, it appears they've outlawed Islam itself, and they've actually started rounding up, like, numbers are all over the place because there aren't any stats from anyone other than the government. Some people say more than 1 million people have been rounded up and forced into camps for re-education, Chinese style, where they've been the government, the Chinese government. I mean, when you have 1 million people and the camps are visible from space, sooner or later they do have to explain it. And so apparently the explanation has gone in that these are for education and job training and whatever, but these are the very definition of concentration camps. These are what America did with Japanese during World War II. They concentrated people of a certain ethnic group into these camps, into internment camps. It's what the British did to Boers in South Africa, and indeed that the British used during World War I for detaining Germans, and it's what Germans did to Jews, frankly. And although they're being adamant this is to help integrate them and de-radicalize them and get them to be all the sort of liberal easygoing Chinese-speaking Muslims that we want them to be. The accounts coming out of from the international Uyghur community are saying that for example, the story here is talking about rape, murder, all the very worst sort of stuff, and these people are just disappearing. No one knows where they're going off to, and they're ending up in blue jumpsuits in these camps. So yeah, indeed, Mr. Chip. It's actually really interesting. They're a very large group. They cover geographically a very large part of China. They don't look. I mean, again, Central Asia is a super interesting place where you've got a bunch of people from sort of Turkish and Mongolian and Tibetan sort of backgrounds, and they all mix together. So they have these faces that are kind of like half Japanese people in a lot of ways. To me, it actually looks very cool. I love seeing the Kazakh athletes in the sort of Central Asian Republic. People when they have sports events with them. Yeah, there's a large population of these people in China. They speak Chinese and typically Turkic languages, and they are nominally, at least, the region is predominantly Islamic religion. But the crackdown there is something that once again they're getting away with an awful lot of stuff. So it's kind of and the stories that are coming out are pretty as bad as you'd expect. And granted, people could say anything because the block on information means that it's impossible to verify because the Chinese government has them all locked up in camps. But there again, do you trust the Chinese government's message on it? It's extremely disturbing, and again, it's also disturbing, just like with the Saudi Arabian drama that I'm not going to talk about tonight, that it kind of shows you can get some countries powerful enough that people can't hold them accountable anymore, and they do crazy shit, and that seems to be what's happening. So that bothers me. There's a mini play thing that I was talking about before. That's kind of cool. Oh, Laura, you're in Japan. We're going to be back in Japan on Tokyo on November 8th. Oh, cool. You're just back for a short trip? I'm good. How are you? Yeah, if you're around, we should catch up. Yeah, and of course, anyone, if you're ever in town, definitely hit me up for lunch or anything like that anytime. It'd be awesome. Cool. And, yeah. So... next story at the top here. This is an interesting one. So everyone, the big international news story this week was, of course, the decriminalization of. In fact, it wasn't even decriminalization. It was actually legalization of the herb of weed in Canada. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's not why my just about to turn 9-year-old wants to go to Vancouver all of a sudden. But I guess I should brief my son what this article says, which is basically this is a legal discussion about the criminal code in Japan, and specifically that the criminal code prohibits any resident of Japan, so not just Japanese people. It prohibits the Japanese criminal code not only purports to apply to Japan, but anywhere else in the world, i.e. kind of makes sense in a sense, right? So for example, if you have these child molesters that go off to Southeast Asia, and for whatever reason they're not accountable down there, but that they did that or whatever, and it would have been illegal in Japan. The criminal code works that these people can be arrested when they come back to Japan, even if the crimes that they committed were committed outside of Japan. A more interesting and technical point that this article looks at is, well, what if it's legal in the country that you go to, but it's not legal in Japan, i.e. consumption of marijuana, which again we should all remember that, hey, I am for legalization. I mean, I don't smoke, I don't drink very much, so it's not like I'm rushing to this from a stoner perspective, but at the same time, I think in moderation and knowing people who have done this, and my personal opinion is, there are much worse things that are legal, and legalize it, tax it, make it accessible. I'm all for that. No, to me, just the same way as going and having a beer somewhere, no problem with that. Having a cookie, I mean, again, it's fairly well established that the harm is minimal. The harm of smoking is about the same as regular smoking, and it's not as addictive. So I'm okay with the idea of legalization, but of course I live in a country where it is treated as a drug in exactly the same way as if you had like a kilo of coke. So no matter your disagreements with the regulation, which is funny, in New Zealand where it's everywhere, people talk about, well, it should just be legalized. And even the police don't want to deal with marijuana cases there anymore, and they don't bother with them, even though it's still technically illegal. And in Canada, they've gone the full step of legalizing it. In Japan, there is no debate about this. And it's kind of funny because it was actually not criminalized until after World War II. It was actually, Japan actually had a huge hemp industry. It's part of, it's a native plant here. But when they decided to outlaw it, Japanese, they love their rules, and they're full on it. So you don't mess around. You do not ever do that stuff in Japan. You'll get put in an immigration detention center, which is an outer circle of hell. You never want to be in one of those, and you'll be kicked out of the country. Now, what's interesting about this article, it points out that the way that the law works, technically a Japanese exchange student in Canada, or even a resident, like anyone who's watching this show who's been in Canada, If you go to Canada and legally consume marijuana and come back to Japan, well, theoretically, if they knew that you did it and proved that you could do it, you could be accountable as if you had procured and consumed marijuana in Japan. You could be actually criminally charged with it. That said, the chances of that happening, obviously, I mean, it would be kind of ridiculous to do. It might even prompt a change of the law, and it's a specific provision of the law, the idea to make sure that people don't escape accountability for crimes. And this applies to the entire criminal code, not just marijuana, but they did point out, and apparently, well, that's kind of a technicality, and some people kind of started the theoretical debate. Well, you know, is it illegal for someone to legally go and have this, you know, on a trip and come back to Japan? And technically, under the law, it is illegal. And apparently the embassies and consulates in Canada, the day that it became legalized, started broadcasting in Japanese to all the Japanese people. Don't get in those lines, don't take it, because technically it's illegal in Japan, which is kind of silly. But there you go. I think it's ridiculous. As a lawyer, I think it's ridiculous. But there we go. Don't mess around with this stuff. Congratulations, Canada, and seriously, it's common sense, if you ask me, at least that. I mean, I'm not for deregulating all drugs, but that one, I mean, it's just the fact that the inconsistency of regulation, I think, discredits other laws, right? I mean, people say if this is illegal, then frankly, it makes the law grey for people, which I don't think it should be. So good on you, Canada. With Japan, again, I think the prohibition thing is just, and I know for a fact in Japan it doesn't work. You know, it's not, it exists. I used to go surfing, all my Japanese friends, you know, it exists, you know. So, yeah, you know, even in Japan, so the hardcore approach to it, especially on something that's not technically necessary. The thing is, in Japan, they really don't focus on the policy or the intention of the law. They think about the just purely, if it's a law, you have to follow it. So we'll see. Japan will probably be, like with smoking regulation, they'll be the last country to change the rules, but for now, that is a risk that you take if you decide to go to Canada, particularly if you live in Japan. A little bit silly, but there you go. It is a little bit like extraterritorial taxation, except this is criminal, so there you go. I think it's unlikely, I agree, it's unlikely that something would actually happen, but there you go. This is another just interesting general story. Japan set a target, a soft target, but objectives of having 10% women executives by 2020, and the country's falling short of that. This is something that, well, it's kind of funny. I'm half distracted trying to keep up with the comments on the side, but I'm also trying to keep moving forward, so I will keep doing that. If you want to say something to me that and deliberately catch my attention and tell me to do something, put it at Mark Kiko Simon and it will flash in orange and I will pick it up, but otherwise I'm going to keep charging through. All my Japanese friends exist, that's right, they do. So with the target for women executives, a lot of companies were doing this, and they it's kind of fun. It's a real challenge. I mean, the reason that you have that target is the same reason you have affirmative action programs. It's the idea that having it there and making it more accessible incentivizes people to try to become it, to aspire to become it more. You might have women who, for example, left the workforce, and the thought of coming back in, you know, and thinking that, well, they're never going to have a chance of being an exec, no matter how hard they work, you know, might make them not aspire to come back in. Again, it results in upper management of companies that doesn't have women's perspective when their customers often are full of women. All the problems that you have with companies that basically don't understand and aren't connected to their customers because the key decision makers in the companies, you know, are all men. So setting these targets, having been in companies, and not my current one, I don't know how my current one's doing, but my former companies I know had this problem where they had a real problem. They were trying to promote anyone that they could to sort of partly to make this target. The target was really firmly set within the company, and it resulted sometimes in again, because IT is particularly just male dominated, and there are very few people who come in at the bottom and stay all the way through. Yeah, it's funny when you can promote people too fast and then they can't handle it, and when they can't handle it, people go, oh, you see, that's why we don't have women, which is not the right point. The point is you've got to support them all the way through, you know, over a period of time, so they develop in the same way as the male execs would, and make it clear that that's something that's achievable for them. I know the companies really are doing this, and in a lot of cases they're using, actually, for example, board members that are foreign women. They're asking them to become, who have some experience at this. They're really failing badly. There you go, 3.8% Japanese, and it doesn't look like it's going to improve very soon. But there again, I do know companies that are trying hard. Mainly the international companies are taking this seriously. But 2020, yeah, they're a long way off that target, and they're not going to achieve it. So, you know, a long way to go on this. I can tell you that it's changed since I arrived. I mean, it's gone from being completely unimaginable to being something that people are really now thinking about. Why can't we have 10%, you know, women executives? And it's not just an issue of wanting to. It's an issue now of you know, making it so that the pool of people available for that are there. But at least this is for the best intentioned companies are struggling, and let alone probably the majority of companies that don't even think about this still. But it's good that the government has set the target, and they recognize, again, when you've got a workforce where every industry is short of people now and the population is declining, the whole country is going to collapse if they don't basically encourage women to be active working in the economy the same as men. And, you know, the economy's actively discouraged that. They haven't had the opportunities that men have had, particularly in Japan. It's been so sort of male dominated. And, you know, they've got to turn that around. And that is a graph that shows how much Japan still has to turn that around. And not just Japan, but Japan has a particularly big challenge. Tokyo, boom, number 3 in the global power index. Feel the power of Tokyo, behind London and New York. But, you know, I mean, Tokyo's doing pretty well. Ahead of Paris, ahead of Singapore, ahead of Amsterdam, ahead of Seoul. So, you know, doing okay there in the power. I don't know, honestly, I don't know exactly what the criteria of this is. This is something that gets announced every year, and apparently they've been number 3 for the last 3 years. Azumanga Devo, that's Devo Hunter, I believe. It's good to see you. And Azumanga, that's a very West Australian nickname name. Hey, there's Tim the Asian Ant. Good to see you. Ohio indeed. Good morning to you, sir. Good to see you. Gave some MyChan updates at the start of the show, so make sure you check that out. Yeah, apparently I'm sure that Japan, in fact, I can now hold this up and actually read it close up now, so that's even better. Tokyo scored improved mark for livability because of working hours are continuing to decline in Tokyo. They certainly have declined for me, I mean, compared to the old days, and that is improving. But it was downgraded in the environment category because the Institute now considers how cities contribute globally on the issue. And certainly in Japan, with the loss of nuclear power, we're slowly adding renewables, but basically Japan is now basically powered by CO2 polluting fuel sources. This is the one benefit of nuclear, is that it's the best solution actually from a global climate change perspective, from a global warming perspective. Of course, you've got all the risks that we had to deal with here associated with the source, and people want renewables. But even with renewables, they're inconsistent, they're very hard to level out, it's hard to store the electricity, so nuclear is a good solution for that. And having shut everything down, everything's gone back to oil and coal-powered and all that sort of stuff, so that would partly explain it. But still, in spite of all of that, Tokyo is doing good. So yes, we remain the place to be, so check that out. We've got... This is really, really interesting. So this one, no one else seemed very interested in it, but I pinged about it this week. Is the common Japanese phrase for goodbye the reason for Japan's crazy overtime hours? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So let me explain this a little bit. With Japanese culture, the hardest thing about the language is that English is just kind of a chaotic mess, but with European languages and stuff, I mean, they'll have things like a table will be, male or female, in German as well, other languages, you'll have fixed things assigned to you. This person is, a teacher, this person is a child or whatever. Everything is kind of assigned a fixed place in terms of the grammar and the wording. With Japanese, everything changes depending on the situation and the room and the people that you're in. It's like lining up the kids. You always have to talk based on the number of the tallest kid or the shortest kid. It's like something like that. So like the tallest kid leaves, and 3 short kids come in, and all of a sudden you become the top dog in the room or something like that. And based on that, everyone has to switch all their language around. It's a little bit like that in terms of seniority, in terms of position, as well as situational, not just based on hierarchy, but also based on this idea of who's arriving first, who's leaving first, who's doing what. And the phrase for hello and goodbye, particularly in a work context, takes this into account. So arriving at work, typically people say good morning, ohayo gozaimasu. It is kind of funny how people will say ohayo gozaimasu sometimes when you're working the night shift, in the sense that it's the beginning of the workday. They'll say it even though typically ohayo gozaimasu you're not supposed to say after 10 a.m. not midday. 10 a.m. in Japan. From 10 a.m. is konnichiwa. But in a work context you can say it if you're arriving at 3 p.m. for example. But when you leave, this is a really, really interesting thing. And it's something that gets me, because the way I work, I show up to work early and I leave early if I can. And I leave early partly because I want to go home, see my boy, and partly because I want to, I'm a manager, I have a team of people that work with me, and I don't want to be the manager that's sitting there making everyone else sit there in a way. I want to kind of set an example that I don't want people working overtime for the sake of working overtime. I don't want to be holding people back. I want people to go when they feel like they can go. So I'd rather leave early and go work at home if I have to, quietly out of view, than sit there creating an impression that people have to stay late. And the thing about working like that in Japan is that people don't see you when you work there in the morning. Everyone arrives and just says ohayo. They don't apologize for coming later than you. Oh, I'm sorry you got here first. They just come and start. But when you leave in Japan, the language is really, really, really particular. When you are leaving before other people, the way that you say goodbye is you apologize. You say osaki ni shirei shimasu. You say, please excuse me, I'm going ahead of you, I'm going before you. Basically, you confess and admit and kind of use an apology phrase for saying, I'm really sorry that I'm leaving before you. I.e., you have to kind of admit that you're not working as hard as the other people, and you don't say otsukare-sama desu. Otsukare-sama desu is what you say when you're all finishing at the same time, or to someone who's staying there behind you. So someone say, or if you say osaki ni shirei to someone, well, they might say otsukare-sama desu to you, like good job or whatever. But typically it's when someone's finished the job at the end of the day that you get the otsukare-sama desu. But when you say osaki ni, it's a really uncomfortable thing to say. When you see the rest of your team are working hard, you feel like the odd one out, that you're leaving everyone behind, and you're telling them, I'm leaving you behind when you go. So it means that saying osaki ni is something that people don't like. It results in two funny things, and this is with Japanese people. Gaijins, it takes a long time to figure this out at all, because it's based on a cultural logic applied to the language. What you often get is when you get new graduates from university who don't know these rules yet for how to communicate in companies, they will leave at 6 p.m. and they'll say otsukare-sama desu to everybody, and they'll leave when they're supposed to say osaki ni shirei. And what happens when you get a new person who does that? They piss everybody off. It's like, what are they doing running out early, and like they're Mr. They've achieved something saying otsukare-sama desu when they're leaving us behind. How dare they? You get this really horrible, and what typically happens is those people will get hazed and pressured to stay and work the next day, just out of spite, because people hate that they did this based on a grammar mistake where they didn't realize that you're not supposed to say otsukare-sama desu when you're leaving work ahead of someone else, because at school or bukatsu they do everything at the same time, but at work when they do this they get into trouble. And also, having worked in companies doing IT in particular, where I did all-nighters all the time, and I remember sometimes someone would leave and they would either say osaki ni, they'd say it correctly and leave, and everyone, the moment they left, hey, are you not giving that person enough work? Or, geez, that's easy for some people, they can walk out on us. Well, leave more work for us. They literally say behind your back, oh, you're just dumping us with all your extra work and you're not trying hard. And everyone feels like that person by leaving has dumped extra work on them, even if they don't even do anything related to them. So it creates this peer pressure atmosphere that people are trapped, especially because what happens is not only does that person who left early get hazed, but the people who remain behind kind of are in this peer pressure situation that they have to join in the bullying and bad-mouthing of the person who left in order to not be singled out and targeted themselves, which of course makes them afraid when they need to leave early. And typically what happens when you have something coming up that you need to leave early is you set it up. You say, dude, I'm really sorry, on Thursday this week I'm going to have to go a little bit early on that one day, but I'm going to do a whole lot of overtime on the night before to make up for it, and I'll work the night after, and I'll come in on the weekend, but I have to go home early on Thursday. You have to sort of set it up to soften it by making it look like you're not walking out on everybody. And yeah, it's an aspect of the language which definitely fosters the overwork culture, no question. And it's something which I've been in, and it's kind of scary. When I leave every day. So also because when people realize that that's the consequence, and they have to show that they're self-aware and sorry about it. So they say osaki ni shimasu, like as an apology. But they really hate saying it because it's like waving a flag that, hey, I'm leaving, I'm abandoning you guys, and people hate to say it. So they try to sneak out basically to avoid saying it because it's such an uncomfortable thing to say. I say it loudly when I go home every night, and I say it, because I'm the joshi. I'm the senior. I want to send the signal to my team. You can go. I don't want to create a team that feels pressured to stay late. Although I'm also sure sometimes that they think, even though I get work done in the morning before they arrive, it looks bad. I know it looks bad, and I still feel bad saying it in Japanese. It always, whenever I say it, osaki ni shimasu, yeah, it kind of gets me. So this is true, even as the manager, and I'm the one who sets the tone. So it's an interesting phrase anyway. And yes, so I think that's true. The way that you say osaki ni shimasu is it. The seat. So it's been 3 years, I believe. I think this is what the article is about. In fact, more than that. Wow, it's been 10 years since Brian McNeil published an essay, which eventually became the book. Hello, my name is Local and I'm a Racist. That I've got over there. And he came back to that story. 2008, so the 10-year anniversary of the blog that set it all off, which was kind of a controversial blog at the time. And even me, I did the whole thing. What would you buy? The Hikusai book. Oh, I kind of half started on that project as well, and it was actually really good, but it required a lot of focus. I was inspired by this particular book to start on it, and I wrote a few chapters actually. But to really do it right, I'd really need to take a couple of weeks off, and I've never had the chance to do it. But yes, I would love to write a Hikusai book myself. But anyway, the Brian McNeil book is a good book, and I read it and I loved it, and I was moved by it. And the real starting point to the whole thing was the Gaijin seat, particularly for Brian. So he is an African American person who's lived in Japan a long time now, but he gets this thing. He's a tall guy. He is an African American. He lives in Yokohama, where there is U.S. military and so on. And he sits on the train, and frequently, no matter what happens, that seat, no matter how busy the train gets, full the train gets, that seat beside him frequently, even now, stays empty. And this is something that really, really gets to him. It really bugs him, and he talks about in his book and in his essay how he starts to feel like this empty seat is like a character that taunts him. It represents the feeling of fear and uncertainty that other people on the train have against him as a foreigner. And I'll tell you, I don't experience, I think, as much as Baye does. He says it still is more often than not kind of an experience, and he's used to it, and it still gets to him. I think I've noticed it, and it has bugged me, although probably it never bugged me as much as him. I think I decided early on, the few times that I did notice it, and I thought, well, you guys, why would you not sit down? Seriously, well, you're the idiots. I'll enjoy the extra space. That's kind of the way, own your suffering was kind of the way that I took it. But, and you'll still see now, like, if there's a train and there are like 2 empty seats, sometimes someone will walk up towards the seat beside me and they'll notice a foreigner and they'll check out the other seat, and they'll go to that one instead. You'll see them change their minds. It happens. I mean, not all the time, and I'm like I say, I'm the seat next to me is almost never empty. But you see little things about it. So it is something that exists, and even if it exists less for me than for other people, I mean, by all accounts, apparently, if you're a good-looking Gaijin girl, apparently it won't happen so much. If you're white, you might get it less. If you're Asian, they might not even notice. But if you're a standout foreigner, or there are other categories as well, don't bear in mind as well. Homeless people, for example, people that haven't washed or smell really bad, or fat people because the seats here are really narrow. People don't want to squeeze up against them. They get the Gaijin seat as well, though. I guess it's something else for them. And I'm sure that they're bothered by it as well. But, an otherwise normal non-Japanese ethnic person getting that, it bothers him. And he wrote about it, and as usual, when he did the 10-year anniversary article on Japan Times, where he said it's still something that you deal with, and if you want to live in Japan long term, it's something that you need to make peace with, which is certainly true. the old debate started ticking up again that, oh, this is all just in his mind. He's just, being a victim himself and projecting, his own complexes where nothing exists. It's all up in here and it's been fine. What I'll say is certainly it's gotten better, and in Tokyo in the last 10 years, it's become for me almost unnoticeable. Like I said, it still happens for him. And I don't think he's misjudging the situation. I mean, everyone's knows their own situation best. Like I said, I notice it on a soft level every now and then. It was interesting when I retweeted it that, apart from all the congratulations, because Bai is a fantastic writer, it's something that's there, something that doesn't bother me anymore, but it's something that indeed, as he said, I had to make peace with. Check out the article, and check out Bai's stuff, because he's a really, really good writer. His book, Hi, My Name is Luke and I'm a Racist, is amazing, and it's not what you'd expect. It's nothing like what I expected when I was going into it. I thought it is based on this in a way, but it's not based on his feeling of being a victim of racism. It's actually his book on being raised as someone with racially prejudiced views, being raised in New York, in a particular part of New York in a particular time, in a community that was kind of isolationist and black independent, and dealing with all of that on top of coming to Japan. And he's really good at writing. I mean, yeah, you have to check it out. So yes, that's funny. The J-Vlog, look at that. You typed that correctly and it's not going orange, but I saw it. So there we go, I can say it. The J-Vlog says that reminds you of a co-teacher not getting booked for classes, an overweight African American wondering why she isn't getting classes. Bias does exist in Asia now, and look, exists everywhere. Overweight people get discriminated. Not good-looking people get discriminated. I mean, I remember going for like waiter jobs, and with other people, like when they were advertising in the paper in New Zealand, I'd go for jobs in restaurants, and I was always sent to the kitchen, and people who were clearly better looking than me got the waiter jobs, and I was always like, what gives? I had a face for washing dishes apparently, and I did. I would prepare food and wash dishes, and I was okay with that, but never once did I get sent into. So it happens on some level everywhere, certainly, but yeah, it's I like to think that I've improved with age, but I was an extremely awkward 18-year-old. What can I say? But yeah, it's very good, so you should check that out. Now this would normally make me a little bit paranoid, and geez, China wants everyone to have the same power grid. That doesn't sound like a good idea, but actually this is a really good idea. A little bit nerdy, but you're all listening to me anyway, so let me explain it. No, they no, Mr. Cordychip, no they don't. So, at least not in New Zealand, I don't know. The big thing about renewables, renewable energy, wind, solar power, all that stuff, is that it fluctuates all the time. And a grid can only sustain a certain amount of fluctuation before you have to get like backup, like gas powered stuff to sort of balance out, so that it's not going up and down all over the place all the time, because it can make the grid unstable and it can cause blackouts. So this is the main issue that you have with renewable power. The technology around it's getting better all the time. You have all these microgrids, all these storage technologies are getting better, but still it's the big blocker that on a certain grid you can only install a certain percentage of unstable renewables, which is why we still rely so much on carbon-based electricity. Japan has like 10 different power grids. They're isolated. Some of them have different incompatible technical standards. They're basically based on the first generator that they got on their particular grids that just sort of grew up until they bumped into each other. And this is why I've said this before, you can buy a hairdryer in Osaka and it won't work properly in Tokyo. It's the same 110 volts, but the amperage is different. It runs on a different frequency, and people have like warnings on these devices. If you get like a cheap little hairdryer or something like that, I can't remember which one it will like be underpowered and which one it will risk catching fire, but it's crazy. Japan has all these balkanized grids, and it means that you've got all this wind power available in Tohoku and Hokkaido, but they're on independent power grids that only have a certain population, that they don't need to make so much power. So basically, where they can't move the renewable power around and absorb it in a bigger grid, which means that Japan's really limited to how much it can install. And this was a policy issue that I used to deal with as a consultant, trying to figure out, and the biggest and best solution always was getting a bigger grid, joining a bigger grid. The reason that Denmark has like 100% renewable power is because France has like 40% nuclear power, and it all equals out across Europe, that small countries can become fully renewable dependent, when they share the benefit of a larger grid that can soak up and offer better stability. So the idea of China and Korea joining up and having a total cross-Asia power grid, like Europe does, is actually a really good idea, particularly for promoting, climate change strategies and so on. So yeah, this is something. I mean, part of me doesn't want to give the government in mainland China the ability to control the electricity in Japan. I assume there'd be safeguards and backups and so on against that, but against them being able to mess with it. But I do think that the idea of having a large power grid is something that's really important. Something actually, even just within Japan, that's necessary. But there we go. Another big scandal this week. Another scandal. They're often quite similar. There've been all of these inspection faking data scandals happening. The Kobe Steel scandal, a whole bunch of them. The car scandals, always about faking inspection records or whatever. And the funny thing is, what kills me is that Japanese often take quality extremely seriously. They set unrealistically high standards, and sometimes what happens is the response to these standards that get set is that people just sort of work around them or whatever quietly. But Japan is known for its high quality production and attention to detail and stuff like that. And it's been really destructive to have all of these scandals after scandal that undermine this coming up. This one in particular was pretty nasty because there's this company which basically offers these hydraulic dampers. They're like big sort of springs, like car sort of shock absorbers that you can attach to the outside of buildings in order to make them earthquake proof. So for example, if you've got a really rigid concrete building that doesn't have a lot of ability to absorb shaking during an earthquake, and without anything to hold the building if it shakes, it means that these concrete buildings particularly, that were made before earthquake proofing was introduced, are really at risk of collapsing and crumbling if you ever get an earthquake. So there are these companies that make these shock absorbers that you basically can attach to the outsides of buildings and around the platforms, which basically allow the buildings to move while holding the building intact. So basically it's a way to earthquake-proof a lot of buildings, and particularly in Kansai. There's this company that specialized in making these earthquake-proof dampers that protected all of these buildings and were installed on like government buildings, on a lot of really significant infrastructure. And it turns out somewhere along the line they started faking the data and not inspecting them properly, and were basically just using devices that don't say what they're going to do, and put these buildings at risk for earthquake proofing. So there they are bowing, saying that they're very sorry that they got caught. But apparently they found that these devices are being used in the Olympic venues. They're being used, so again it's a bit like the airbags, for example. It's just another case where and you can bet that they probably found out about this a long time before they revealed it, and they probably sat there thinking, well, what do we do? Well, we can't do anything about it. Well, let's just keep doing what we do, and we'll figure out until it gets to the right point that we have no choice but to come out and say it. And that's apparently what happened. It's disappointing. It's happened over and over, and it's something that the government really needs to look at. What's causing that? Odie Jr., boom, never too late. It is never too late for a boom. It's good to have you here. This is kind of cool. Robots, of course, in Japan now extending to convenience stores. I've been to the Amazon Go shop in Seattle. No staff convenience store. There are now, I believe, there's a Lawson in Akihabara, and there's a shop there in Tokyo Station. A lot of Japanese chains are now getting on the bandwagon and doing their own versions of these artificial intelligence based stores where you just walk in, there's no checkout. You can basically, I think you still, I don't know how these work exactly, and I've got to go check them out. Lawrence Sakai, you are correct. That's right. The Tokyo Skytree and some of the Olympic venues use these dampers that weren't inspected properly. So, I mean, damn, who would want? I'd be nervous living under the Skytree anyway, or anywhere near it. But after this, indeed, there is that problem. This is a cool thing. I think you've got to download an app. I'm not exactly sure how it works. So I should go do a video or something about. In fact, someone here, if you're in Tokyo, go do a video about this. Figure out how these shops work. The one at the Lawson in Akihabara, and this looks like it's a Kinokuniya shop in Tokyo Station somewhere. But yeah, this is the future. Robot shops basically. It doesn't mean there's no people. Of course, the stock all has to be. There's people that have to deliver the goods, keep the shelves stocked and everything. But it also means that they're able to track exactly what food people want when, so they can actually stock more accurately, for what's needed. But certainly it also means that when you've got a depopulating country, for example, they can't hire enough people to man convenience stores like in country towns, and these country towns are losing their convenience stores, their post offices, their banks. It's kind of, you know, you'd worry about this in a country with normal employment. You'd say, oh, this is a way to, you know, fire people. But actually in Japan, where they're having to shut down things because there aren't enough workers, this is a great solution to make sure that you can maintain goods and services in, for example, remote towns. And it's just a trial technology that's happening in Tokyo right now. But yeah, so Lauren, you go do it first and take a video and post it, and you'll be like famous or something. So do that. I want to go do this myself. I think it would be a good video, and I want to go check it out. I also want to figure out which technology they're using to do it, but it's super cool anyway. Tokyo Station, and I believe the other one, I think I've bookmarked the app in here as well. So this one, the other staff shop, that's got Kinokuniya written on the side, and plans to open the store at Wednesday. Oh, it's Akabane Station in northern Tokyo. This is not Tokyo Station. Okay, so this is the Kinokuniya one, is putting this in Akabane on a trial basis. And the other one from Lawson I've also got in this, so it's coming up. I did bookmark, check out Nippon. You should all follow Nippon.com just because it's awesome, but they've got great apps for studying Japanese. I haven't used any of these because I don't study Japanese anymore, but you should use them because it's good to know Japanese, especially if you're in Japan or coming to Japan, or Benkyo. That's one. I like the interface, that looks super cool. Kanji Recognizer. Oh man, see, they've got so much. I never had any of this stuff. In my day, you know, I had to walk 20 miles in the snow barefoot. I had to all I had was like a chisel and a hammer. We didn't even have paper or ink. You know, it wasn't easy to do kanji back in my time. Now you just got these apps. Kids these days, they got it so easy. There's a lot here actually, so go check, follow Nippon.com, find these apps and install them all until you get NLPT1. Then you can uninstall them and have a huge party. Co-working spaces in Japan. Again, I've got my side sort of thing. Boom, 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 there it is up there, my chat TV. And it's nice to have places where you can go off to work, your startups, or your again, I know a lot of people who are starting up little businesses of their own and so on, and there are a lot of places. For example, there is Ginza Hub, where Rob, the guy who's helping me, he's got people who pay like fixed members, and there's a lot of co-working spaces in Tokyo that you can just rock up to and use like on a one-off basis or on a periodic basis. And yeah, there are some ones in here where basically, again, tofugu.com, another excellent site for Japanese language learning, has gone and summarized them. So we've got Base Point. This one doesn't include Ginza Hub, but that's another good one. Ginza Hub is one word. You can check out that one for Rob, the guy who's helping me. There's also Cafes. What is that? B-Roll Cafe, N-Roll Cafe, Bushitsu, The Snack, a mysterious co-working space in Ginza. Ironically, they don't serve snacks. Well, that's disturbing. But again, if good to know where the co-working spaces are, especially if you're traveling like for work and you need a place that you can go to. This is all very good as well. Quint Ranked, you had to walk to school in the snow uphill both ways. Uphill. That's luxury. I say. I had to run uphill with weights tied to my back both ways, and I was beaten when I got there. 4 Yorkshiremen for you there. So what was the name of Rob's workspace site? It was Ginza Hub. I'll put it in here, and you can Google it. Oh, I've got to sign into chat. Is that really? Oh, I know, I've got to do this on the web page over here, so I will do that. Wait a minute, I'm not gonna. And in shorts. Shorts? Oh, what I would have given to have had shorts. Kids these days, they've got it easy. Two things. Okay, so I see questions coming in here, which I will take. The first one is, where is Rob's working space? It's Ginza Hub. I think it's ginzahub.net or .com, but you can go check that out. It's Ginza Hub is one word, Ginza Hub. It's not, yeah, if you do it like a separate words, you'll get a pub, which probably is less productive. Lauren is asking where you can get the portrait coffees. If you want to get one of those, all you need to have is a free account for Amazon Web Services, AWS, and if you're in Mega or whatever, there's a working space there called the AWS Loft, and they do those laser, it's basically facial recognition. They match you with a celebrity and they do laser recognition stuff, and it's super cool. And you can get a free account with them if you build applications. Most people have an account with them anyway. It's where most of the infrastructure of the internet is stored, and yeah, they've got a working space for people with accounts. And if you want to check it out, I work near there, so yeah, if you ever want to come for a coffee, if anyone ever wants laser coffee, I'll be happy to take you for one. So yeah, that is cool. I'll take you and your husband. By the way, you seem to be having a great trip around Japan at the moment. What else? This is just like more cool robot stuff. They're building these tanker ships that are going to be like driverless, which I guess when you think about the piracy problems that you have like around Sumatra and the Horn of Africa and stuff like that, I always wondered, like, how many people do you actually need to have on a ship, and why do they make it so easy for people to hijack them? So again, it's kind of like this is very much up the alley of where I think everything's going, driverless cars. It makes more sense to me to actually have driverless, logistics infrastructure. Again, not wanting to put truck drivers and cargo haulers or whatever out of business, but at the same time, like with truck drivers in Japan, I've got friends who are truck drivers, and they drive. I mean, apparently no one I know, but when they do stories in Japan about people who use crystal meth, for example, truck drivers, they do it because they get made to work impossible shifts. They've got to drive end to end in the country all the time. And to me, being able to do that at night by like robots or whatever, even just putting someone on the cars to watch them, but it seems to me, there's a big opportunity that I can see the world changing quite a lot by this, and I think it's really cool that Rolls-Royce and Intel are going to build autonomous ships. Sony, blockchain, a really cool thing, crypto, whatever, coming out all over the place. Apparently if you add blockchain to your business, it'll instantly get like a 30% stock value increase. So Sony found this awesome thing and they want to use it for DRM. This annoys me, not because I know what they're actually specifically planning to do with this, but it reminds me of the story of Sony that I've told on here before. How Sony used to be a really cool home appliance. It used to be a cool device business that was sort of dedicated to creating devices that would allow people to watch movies and consume music and everything more easily. And when the music companies and the movie companies started suing Sony for it releasing beta video, which was you could record TV shows, for releasing twin cassette recorders that they saw served no purpose other than being a copyright violation tool, they decided that they wanted to shuttle the music companies up by buying them out so that they could get on making their cool equipment. Of course, what happened was the media companies kind of ended up taking over Sony, and the peak of this happened in around 2000, when they actually started putting DRM management onto CDs. That would actually, the idea was they wanted to stop people ripping CDs to make MP3s, so they put on some code onto some CDs that were released in Japan, that if you put them into a PC-based CD player, they would actually break the CD player and damage the PC. They would physically damage the computer. And not if you tried to copy it, just simply if you tried to put the CD in there to listen to it, to play, to using as a computer disc player, as a CD player. So when this happened and people's computers were getting broken, and it was an Inflow track, I actually have the CD from it. And I love Inflow, and of course it wasn't Inflow's fault, but of course the backlash against Sony and them for doing this, and this was right at the time that they bought Iowa, that the company just started making crap products, and that they started to do all this sort of stuff, so it kind of drove me nuts anyway. But yes, there is Sony screwing up a good thing again. This is really interesting. Premiere Rush has just launched. If you're into making videos on the internet, this is so Adobe's made a version of Adobe Premiere that runs only basically on the cloud, which means that you can use it from your computer, from your iPhone, from your laptop, and it basically gives you access to easy to use on a mobile application or mobile based editing of videos. That's basically the same quality as Premiere, and because all the codes, the video and stuff is loaded on their servers. It basically means you don't need to, all the heavy lifting, or the processing and everything, the storage is all done, on the site. So I think you pay something like $10 a month for it, and it gives you basically like a full PC-based video editor. And it's aimed specifically at YouTubers. The idea of wanting to be able to let people do professional level video editing from their iPhones, and it's brilliant. And honestly, I don't know why every hardcore application isn't like this. You get the CPU power. You don't need to buy a big video card. It will render super fast because they'll use GPU powered servers, cloud-based servers. The software, the features, it basically turns your iPhone into a thin terminal that is just an interface, and you can go edit all of your stuff. You can mix it up with music, effects, everything. If it sounds like I'm selling this, it's not so much this product. I haven't tried this product out yet, but what this purports to be is what I think every software application should be, actually. Yeah, I think that's super cool. Believe in yourself. You don't want that. I don't want that on their servers. Well, I don't know what they have on their servers, but yeah, I think what they're enabling with this sort of thing, the idea that you're going to be able to basically, it won't matter what sort of phone you have, what sort of device you have, you're going to be able to basically make anything. That's really, really awesome. If this is what it promises to be and what it should be and what I think everything should be, I think this is pretty cool and it might be worth signing up to, so I'm going to check that out. What else have we got here? More universities in Japan have been adjusting the scores of university entrance, which kind of sucks. Yes, second to last story here, I believe. This car, the Itasha, the cars that get done up basically with anime designs and stuff like this. So a couple of tips here if you are ever interested in having one of these cars. First rule is never buy a car that looks like that. Second rule, if you buy a car like that, don't run anyone over with it. And third thing is that if you own a car like that and you run somebody over with it, don't run away, because you're going to be pretty easy to identify at some point. They're going to figure out it was you. And that's what happened. And apparently people are as outraged at the crime of running someone over and driving away as the fact that they were driving this and they did this to a beautiful, otherwise beautiful car. So yeah, some pro tips there. I mean, some people, they love their Love Live anime. This Love Live, by the way, I've never seen it, but apparently there are now, it's a popular enough anime in Japan that's made by men with their idealized version of anime girls, that apparently there are now women who will put on their dating profiles on the internet that they will not date men who watch this anime. But he's going to put it all over a car. I mean, yeah, it's not really... First thing is certainly let's not run people over, but please people, you don't need to have a car like that. Second to last thing, Twitch, which I do occasionally play with. I've got games and stuff that I play on it. I suck, and I was just playing around with it. Now they're starting to show like football and stuff like that. And again, they're showing what I think YouTube and everyone should be doing, which is, they're showing. I've always why do we only watch esports and video games on that format with the live commenting? I mean, this is cool, and this is not esports, and this is better than esports, obviously. But you guys, we can interact. You guys can actually be part of the sort of story. And when you've got this with sports, it's like being in an extended stadium where everyone can like cheer and do whatever. And they can actually do all sorts of, people can, they can actually do a bunch of interactive features that make watching the game more enjoyable. And this is what Twitch is experimenting with. And I think it's really, really cool. And this is what's going to happen. It's a bit like, to me, the Nico Nico Doga technology. Of having the comments going across the screen that just makes it feel like you're sort of more involved. I like that, and it's good to see that somebody's doing that. I hope to see more of it. Abe is going to put up the tax rate from 8%, consumption tax from 8% to 10% next year. They've just locked that in. It's just 2% more, and honestly, I find having all the 1 yen coins that you need for anything that was 100 yen, that you have to pay 108 yen for everything all the time. I'm like, please just make it 110. Get rid of the damn 1 yen coins. By the way, 1 yen coins in Japan cost more to make than they're actually worth as currency. So there's kind of no point having them, but you need them because we have 8% tax. So. Consumption tax. I mean, again, every time any government's ever raised consumption tax in Japan, for the first to 5%, then to 8%, they've always been destroyed in the elections. I think everyone's kind of getting used to the inevitability of this by now. But it is going to go up as planned, so that's something that's going to happen next year. Lawson is going to open an automated convenience store. So some people who are asking about that, that is going to be located, I believe, in Akihabara. Let's check that, the Lawson Smartphone Play. There it is. The Akiba Square building near Akihabara Station is going to be fully automated. So that's something to go check out, actually, that I want to go check out myself. So that looks pretty cool. And this, non-native creative, Alicia, so she does the Japanese Pod 101, as well as like a bunch of those other sort of things like that as well. I think the English teaching series as well. She does a bunch of actually really, really interesting stuff. And one series that she's just started is, I was involved in helping with the Tokyo pre-screening of the Big in Japan documentary by David Elliott Jones here, and he's a really interesting guy. And his project, I mean, he gave up 2 years of his life to pursue this project. And it's Alicia's gone and set up this project of basically pulling together all of these super interesting creators and talking with them about being, professional creators. Living outside of their home countries, and apparently not just limited to Japan, but starting off with expats in Japan, so very, very close to home for everybody around here. And yeah, it's a really cool series. So she's gone through, done a really cool interview, documented the whole thing, and it's going to be the start of a series I think it's going to be really interesting to watch. So you know, for those of you who are aware or not aware, I believe she set up a separate channel for it for non-native creative. There's a blog with RSS and all that sort of stuff, and follow it because I think it's going to be really good content, and I'm going to follow. I'm probably going to share it here anyway, but you guys should definitely follow it. And yeah, David's a really super interesting guy, and it's a really good interview. I mean, much better than anything I would do. But yeah, it actually made me remember when I watched this. It made me remember the series that I did with Ace Producer versus Geek YouTuber, which was actually a lot like this, although when I watched it back for the first time in a couple of years, I realized, well, one, it's only ever got like, each video has like 300 or 400 views, so nobody watched it. I appreciate 300 or 400 people that did watch it, but you know, it didn't get its own momentum very well. And it was me and him kind of goofing around for the first like 6 or 7 minutes of it, like, and they were all 6 and 7 minute episodes, so that was a bit too long, but the content was actually really good. But when a professional does the same thing, it comes out like this, and this came out really well. So credit to her, and you should check this out. And that's it. That's all the topics for tonight. Good to see you all. The J-Vlog has a question. When did Japan move from a flat tax to a percent tax? What do you mean by that? Well, it used to have, I mean, so the idea of a consumption tax is something, actually New Zealand was one of the first countries that did it, and it's just a very efficient way to raise revenue compared to income and having product-specific taxes. So I believe that happened. The 5% tax came in, when was it? It was like during the 90s, and it was actually one of the things that people blamed for the bubble. It was like in the mid-90s when that came in. A lot of people said that's the reason, that's what brought down the economy. It was going to collapse anyway, but there you go. Did I say someone was a nobody? I don't think I said anyone was a... Oh, you watched it. Thank you for watching it, Dave. So that's what I mean, actually. So when I say nobody, I mean it was the usual cool people. Only the very coolest people watched it, and there were only like 300 or 400 cool people. And I appreciate you guys coming and being cool every week and supporting me. I was really hoping that there would be something, because I thought the content in it was really good. I was hoping it'd get some momentum of it, so it didn't, and that's okay. That happens with some videos sometimes. But yeah, if you haven't actually checked out that series, I must admit, out of all the things that I've made that are actually worth watching and listening to and going back to, the Ace Producer versus Geek YouTuber series that I did with Ace, they're pretty short episodes and it's quite watchable. And that guy is you know, he's a producer for National Geographic and Discovery Channel, and he's got really good insight on making content on the internet, you know, and having tried that himself. Plus, he made really cool stuff. Dave, yes, it'll be the first time for me too when we have it. So look, we're over time, way over time. So I guess as usual, I thought I was going to have time left, but I don't. But screw it. I'm going to do a bit of an outro tune, and that's going to be the end of the show. So have a good week, everybody. Thank you for joining, and see you later. Keep cool till after school. Ka kite ano, and see you later. Boom. Let's do some music. Boom. In fact, you know what might work? This is so crazy. It might work. Let me try plugging in the HDMI to the iPad, because I haven't plugged anything else in, which means that I might just give it the first pop here. And I'm not going to continue. Oh, I might continue on that track, but that track was kind of coming out kind of crap before. So will that show up? I guess I have to move the overlay. Oh, I can't mix it so I can show the screen. Oh well, let's see. I can turn up the tracks anyway. Have a good evening, everybody. Good to see you all. Thank you for joining, and see you later. Let me desktop audio, not that one. I want to turn on this one, and outro. In fact, let's just make this a regular beat, and let's make this house, and we'll turn this off. Oh. I know what happened there. In fact, I don't need that, so here we go. Anyway, have a good night, everyone. Peace. That's it. I'll see you tonight. Peace.